Alright, hey guys, how's it going? Got another Destiny 2 video for you all today. This one's another build, and it's focusing on one of my favorite guns in the game, Tarrabah. I know a lot of people call it Tarrabah, but it has a really big soft spot in my heart. I just really like the fantasy of it, the unleashing the beast and just mowing down everything in your path. I know it's a bit weak, but I wanted to make a build that emphasizes its strengths and then tries to downplay its weaknesses as much as possible. And I feel like this might be okay in something like Grandmasters and Master Vaults of Glass due to the infinite ammo for primaries that they added. Just with how the gun works and how you're almost rewarded for shooting tankier enemies so you can stack up Ravenous Beast faster and then be able to unleash it, and then being able to deal that really strong damage to enemies in those difficulties might actually be viable. I have to do some more testing on it, of course, but there's potential there. And there's a potential with a lot of these niche weapons like Symmetry or Malfeasance. These guns that seem kind of useless in normal difficulty content, but in something in the high end where enemies are really tanky, something like Symmetry's perk really shines, and then something like Malfeasance with 3 people, being able to pop those taken slugs a ton, especially now with infinite ammo, seems viable. So let's get into the build. The exotic armor we're going to be using today is Mantle of Battle Harmony, and it's a really interesting exotic. It looks a bit weird. It's an interesting look for sure. I think it's pretty ugly, except for these like shoulder pads here, but I tried to make a look that downplays that ugliness as much as possible. But I really like the perk here, and it's reminiscent of something like Warlock from D1. The perk is Absorption Cells. Takedowns with weapons that have a damage type matching your subclass element grants you super energy. So it basically adds Thresh to all weapons that match your subclass. And that's also something cool. If you have a weapon that matches your subclass and then has Thresh too, you kind of get to double dip. So that can be really interesting, kind of having like almost like bad jujus with elemental weapons. And the second half is while your super energy is full, you gain a temporary bonus to weapon damage of the type matching your subclass element. So you get a damage buff to all elements matching your damage type or your subclass type. So Tarrabah is solar, so we're going to need to be running a solar subclass. And I think I've settled on middle tree for something like endgame, like raids and stuff, because top tree isn't that useful in PvE. There's some cool builds you can do with like sun bracers, but I think this is more a PvP tree. And then bottom tree is really cool. The new grenades are really nice, and I like that power fantasy of throwing a grenade and you see the whole crowd just explode in fire. It's really nice. But the build is more focused on Tarrabah, and I feel there's just a lot more value in middle tree here, especially with something like the melee where you get empowered when it gives you a damage buff, which doesn't stack with Mantle of Battle Harmonies. The second half, that increased damage when your super's up, but this helps like when your super isn't up. This adds that, and then you can get this back pretty quickly when you have Benevolent Dawn up. So it's just it's a nice loop. And then something that I've been thinking about a lot is the Well is really the best super you could use for this build, because with something like bottom tree, you're going to be wanting your super, you're going to be wanting to use it when it's up. And that's kind of doesn't sync up really well with the second half here, where we kind of want to be sitting on our super to abuse that damage bonus to really amp up our Tarrabah. So Well is a super that you don't really pop when you have it up like instantly. Like you're not going to be like, oh, I have Well, I'm just going to use it. Well's something you sit on a lot, and you usually just use it for DPS phases or when a boss is there. So I feel like that syncs up really well just with Mantle of Battle Harmony. I'm gonna mess that one up a lot. It stacks up with Mantle of Battle Harmony's second half really well. Because in my experience using Bottom Tree, I'm like, oh, it'd be really nice to super here, but I don't want to lose that part of the exotic. So something like Well, I think works very nicely. So getting into the mods that we're using, I'm using Well of Life here. Picking up Solar Elemental Wells grants increased regeneration for a short period of time. We're going to be using Elemental Wells with this build. I like them a lot. They're getting stronger, and I just kind of like the idea of them. All the stuff they add to them is really interesting, so I've been trying to figure out cool builds to go with these. And Well of Life just works well because usually you have to get kind of in close to pick up the wells. So this helps in that sense with the survivability. And then if you use something like healing grenades or something, that just helps. Or the Phoenix Dive, because you get that health regen. And we're using Elemental Charge, so whenever we pick up one of these wells, we're going to become charged with light. And then we're doing Font of Might, so we're going to be getting a damage bonus whenever we pick up a solar well. And this bonus stacks with something like High Energy Fire or Mantle Battle Harmony's perk. I think it's the only damage perk that like stacks with others right now. So just for that, we're going to be using it. And then we're going to be using Protective Light for our Charge with Light. So we're just going to be getting a big damage resistance whenever we get low. And then that pairs really well with something like Well of Life. Because if we're getting low to go pick up a well, we're going to be getting that damage reduction, and then we're going to be getting the healing. And then you pair it with something like your Healing Grenade. You'll be full health then, and then constantly regenning, and then you have the damage reduction. Or you can do the same if you're doing like Bottom Tree. When you get low, and like red health is when the Protective Light activates, then you can do a quick Phoenix Dive. That'll regen you to like half, but you're still going to keep that damage reduction just to keep you really safe. And then we're going to be charging up our Elemental Wells with Elemental Armaments. So you don't really need to think about it when you do it. It's just weapon takedowns with the damage type that match your subclass element have an escalating chance to spawn an Elemental Well. So you just shoot stuff with Tarrabah, and then every now and then you'll spawn a well, and then you go run, pick it up. You'll get Font of Might, and you just keep shooting. You get Ravenous Beast, you turn it on, melt everything. Once your super's up, you just sit on it until you have to well, and then you get to enjoy the ultimate power fantasy of Tarrabah, being a ravenous beast that just gets to mow down everything in front of you. So we're going to move on to some gameplay here. It's going to be Altars of Sorrow, just messing around, having some fun. And in the footage, it's going to be Bottom Tree Solar, but I'm pretty certain on Middle Tree being the best, just with how well works with something like Mantle of Battle Harmony. Alright, so let's jump into that. So this build's a bit unique because you're going to be using Tarrabah for almost everything except maybe like bosses and just some really tanky enemies. But for the most part, you're going to be wanting to stay on Tarrabah because of the fact that you lose the Ravenous Beast stacks when you swap off of it. So using something like a shotgun or a sniper or a grenade launcher, you can use them, but you're going to be losing those stacks. So it's best to use them like right after Ravenous Beast runs out or something. so you mainly just want to stay on Tarrabah. And then one thing to note is it's nice to shoot something that's tanky because the gun builds the Ravenous Beast stacks based on damage, just damage, like plain. It's not based on kills, it's not based on like crits, it's just the pure damage you deal. So shooting like a big tanky enemy like this knight here will build the stacks, in my experience, more quicker than shooting a bunch of adds, because you're gonna have bullets that miss once you kill an acolyte or something. So just having a big meaty target just to lay into to build those charges up really helps. And that's why I think it might be viable in later endgame content like VOG, Master Mode, or Grandmasters maybe even. Because everything's so tanky, you're going to be getting that Ravenous Beast up a lot, and then you'll be able to tear through stuff. And here's just some satisfying gameplay, mowing down just some hordes of Hive. Yeah, it's a really fun build. It's nice to run around with, mess around with it. When Grandmasters are out, I'll be testing it with some friends, seeing how it works out, and I'll get back to you guys on how viable it is for that. Maybe I'll just make a new video if I figure out some new mods, some new, like, a better build for it. But for now, I think Mantle Battle Harmony is the way to go with it. And yeah. Alright guys, thanks for watching. You guys have a good one.